Welcome to the Outsmart Burnout podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Zarya Rubin, a functional medicine doctor, an international speaker, and a burnout badass because I've been there myself. After walking away from my own high-stress medical career, I discovered how to break free from burnout to reclaim my passion, purpose, and joy. And now I'm here to help you do the same. From science-backed tips to time-saving hacks, and hopefully some aha moments that just might change your life. So sit back, relax, and let's do this. Welcome to another life-changing episode of Outsmart Burnout. Today we have a very special guest, Tamu Thomas. She's a transformational life coach, former social worker, and the author of Women Who Work Too Much. Break free from toxic productivity and find your joy. Tamu helps women break the cycle of burnout and reclaim their well-being using nervous system-aligned, trauma-informed techniques like bodywork and polyvagal theory. Her book challenges the cultural norms and pressures that tie women's worth to productivity and offers a powerful roadmap to healthier boundaries and genuine joy. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Dr. Zarya. Thank you very much for having me.
It's our pleasure. And you're coming to us all the way from across the pond.
Mm-hmm.
I am so thrilled to have you here. And I want to dive into all of your brilliance when it comes to burnout, productivity, all the things. But let's back up a little bit and talk about your story in terms of how you went from being a social worker to becoming a life coach and an author. I'm guessing there might have been some burnout along the way.
Well, just a little bit. So my story is that I was a local authority social worker for nearly 16 years. For 14 years, I worked for various local authorities. I was a child protection social worker. And then for the last almost 2 years, I had my own private practice. And in 2009, my daughter turned 2. I got promoted to being a senior social worker, and very quickly I started to notice different symptoms: lethargy, brain fog, just a sense of malaise, which is unlike me because I'm quite a joyful, bouncy person. And so I thought, "Oh, it must be my nutrition. I'm not eating well and I'm not exercising enough." So I went to see a nutritional psychotherapist, and she did all of these things to help me understand why physically I was so tired. And then she started trying to do some psychotherapy. I was like, nope, I didn't come here. I don't want that. Like, it's nothing to do with my mental health. I'm mentally fit. Thank you very much. I'm a go-getter. I'm a girl boss. I do all the things. I don't need this. I just need to know what to eat, when to eat, what supplements I need. Thank you very much. So I hot-footed it out of there, never went back. And
Oh my goodness.
as time progressed, I just started to feel more and more exhausted. But I was able to justify it. I was a mother, a single mother. I had a profession. I was senior. I had very complicated cases. I was traveling all over England because when you work with children and they get placed in foster care, the foster care placement can be anywhere in the UK. They have family members all over the UK. There are a few times where I thought I might have to go abroad to assess family members. I was always in court, and children go to school. So quite often I was visiting children after school, which meant I was getting home late. So I thought, it's normal for me to be this tired. And that's what happens when you're a professional. When you've got a career, you don't just have a job that you clock out of at the same time every day. This is how it is. So I was able to justify it.
Yes,
But
we
in
call it adulting.
adulting, and not just that, I'm ambitious. I'm
Yes.
determined. I'm dedicated. So there were all of these things. Oh, and not forgetting, I'm productive. So there was a recipe of things. And the busier I became, the more I found strategies to suppress my sensations, to numb my feelings, so I could, as they say on those cards, keep calm and carry on. And the more I kept calm and carried on, the more people would say, oh my goodness, Tamu's so resilient. Tamu's so resourceful. You can rely on Tamu. I would have some of the most complex cases in my team. I would have my student social worker that I was the practice supervisor for. I would have my newly qualified social worker who I was the mentor for. And then I'd be having my really complex cases, parents threatening to kill me, get my number plate to find out where I live and all of this stuff. And then somebody would say, oh, we've got a new person starting. Tamu, you'll look after them, won't you? Oh, it's so-and-so's leaving on maternity leave. Tamu, you'll organise the office baby shower. I'll do it. So there was a constant cycle of me doing. So I thought if I set up my own private practice, I'll have more choice over the cases I take. I'll get a better pay, but the cases will be more complicated. But that's fine because I'll be taking on fewer cases. And what happened was, even though the pace of my work changed, I still didn't have that zeal I used to have. And I said at the beginning of my social work career, when the passion fades, that's when I need to move on, because you can't do a job that's as serious as that and just do it as a job. You know, you're playing God to a lesser or greater degree with the lives of families. And then I was like, okay, I just need to do this. And then I just need to do that. And then, and I started having these symptoms, racing heartbeats, shortness of breath, feeling really dizzy. And I would just say, oh, it's kind of like a heightened period of anxiety. I didn't know what was going on. And my only real experience of anxiety was with the parents and the children I worked with. And their anxiety manifested very differently to mine because of all of the additional challenges they were experiencing. And I was a badass. There's no way I could have been anxious. So I would say these things very frivolously. And then I had a few times where it felt like, am I about to die? Oh, don't be so silly. Come on, you've got to do this. You've got to do that. You've got to do the other. And it culminated with me being on my, excuse me being on my way to court. It was a contentious court case, but I was used to that. I was very good at what I did. I was even a bit sassy when I was giving evidence because I knew I'd done a good job. And on the way to court, I had what I now know is a massive panic attack, and I thought I was going to die. I had to use all of my tools that I would share with my children and my families to be able to get back into my body, be able to breathe. I got myself together in my fancy suit and my high heel shoes and my fancy bag, got to court, gave great evidence, was commended by the judge, and on the way home, I didn't even call my GP. I went straight into my GP surgery to make an appointment because I knew something was very wrong. And they explained that it sounded like I was experiencing what they described as a severe level of moderate depression. I had left that and it had manifested into anxiety. I had left that and it had become panic attacks. And then they tried to give me medication. And I was like, I've got nothing against medication. It's got its place, but I knew it wasn't about being medicated. I didn't even know about the term burnout properly. I'd heard the phrase mentioned, but as a social worker who comes from a systems theory background, I thought, no, this is something systemic. There's something bigger at play. And if I just take some pills, I'm not going to be addressing the real issues. So I went to a nutritional therapist again, and I explained what the doctor also referred me to a psychotherapist. I explained what the psychotherapist and what the GP had shared with me. And my nutritional therapist, she just broke it all down and helped me understand how all of my symptoms were a layer cake building to this just frazzled, burnt out body. And I started working with her. I got a coach and I started to understand that my nervous system was a reflection of the system I was in. So the system we all live in neglects us, and it teaches us how to neglect ourselves in order to perform for others, whether it's the workplace, family, friends, whoever. And I just saw how much I was caught up in that cycle. And I thought, I can't continue social work. What am I going to do? I wasn't too sure. I knew I wanted to set up my own business. I had assumed it would be a social work business. And in my own journey, because I wasn't satisfied with what the biomedical model was offering, I did my own research, discovered the world of positive psychology, and I love learning. And I was so taken by how it was benefiting me. I went and did a positive psychology short course. And I was speaking to the lecturer about what my next steps are. And he said, have you thought about coaching? I was like, I don't really know what it is. I see these women online on a beach in a caftan with a laptop talking about how many millions they're making and all of this work-life balance, but I don't want to be on
Oh my God.
and my laptop. I want to be frolicking. And he said, well, it doesn't have to be that. And he said, social workers are the coaches of the therapeutic world. So you've got lots of transferable skills. And coaching isn't regulated in the same way as social work or psychotherapy. So he said, you can do a qualification, but you're not going to learn anything more than what you've learned as a social worker. So you could set up your own practice. And I thought that's really great. But I think that some of the things I've learned as a social worker might not be conducive as a coach, but I didn't want what I saw in terms of the coaching courses. And then as fate or internet tracking would have it, I opened up Facebook and there was an advert from the somatic school, and I did some digging around, and positive psychology had led me to the world of somatics. They're very, very closely linked. And so I decided I was going to train as a somatic coach so that I could support people with their entire experience, not just mindset. And the rest is history.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. And your story resonates so deeply with me because it's so familiar. It
Ah,
is so familiar. And I hear this from so many people and so many women that you're at the top of your field. You're doing everything right. You're checking all the boxes. You're achieving at a very high level. You're serving at a very high level. You're doing all the things for all the people all the time. And there are all of these warning signs. And I call it the check engine light. And your check engine light, in the car, it's flashing. And what do? Rather than pay attention to it, we say things like, well, that's really bloody annoying. I'm going to get some duct tape and tape over it so that I don't see it because it's really bright and it's really flashing and it's really bothering me. It's really annoying. Let's tape over it. And without addressing the underlying issues and problems because we're not aware. We don't know the term burnout. I certainly was not aware of it when I was burned out. I had no idea. I thought, am I having a nervous breakdown? What is happening? I had no clue. And we're not necessarily aware as a healthcare provider, as a practitioner of the term compassion fatigue and what that entails. And so, we just believe that if we keep working harder and more and doing more, we'll be okay because that's what we know. And that's what we're
yep,
good at. And that's what we've been praised for. And that's what we've been rewarded for. So it really does take sometimes a massive wake up call, like your moment on the way to court of, I'm
hmm
going to die. This is not okay. And thank goodness, it was quote unquote just a panic attack. But I
yes,
mean, those are terrifying, but it could have been something really, really scary. And sometimes we need these wake up calls to shake us out of our just routine that is so ingrained in our nervous system
yep,
as normal when it's
hmm
really anything but.
hmm And,
So, yeah.
in my heyday, if you had said to me anything about burnout, I would have thought that you were a hater. I would have thought that I would have come up with all kinds of stories to myself. You don't like my ambition, you're jealous. I would have come up with everything other than accept that I could possibly be burnt out. Because for me, that would have been an ultimate sign of weakness.
Right. It feels like a judgment
Yeah,
on our ability or lack of ability to perform and to
I'm
cope. And
strong.
well, why are other people doing okay and I'm not?
Mhm,
And there's a certain amount of shame around that. So we don't admit it. We don't seek help. We don't go deeper and try to
mhm.
figure it out. We just push it down and soldier on, keep burning out and carry on.
That's it. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So let's go back to the moment where you realized, because I think this is really important for all women to hear. When you said to yourself, yes, something very serious is going on. I have the option to go down this road and seek therapy and take medication. However, I have this underlying sense that this is bigger than me, that this is a systemic issue. And how did you then go about unraveling that and have it then lead to your incredible book?
Yeah. So when I was getting curious about my symptoms, about the signals, I looked around me and every woman in my life, whether they were people I had personal relationships with, close relationships, distant relationships, people I don't know from Adam other than their social media, I could just see this chronic level of overfunctioning. And when I first started coaching, I was working with, my thing was joy, like it still is. My joy is one of my core values. So I was supporting women to experience more joy in their lives. I remember hearing Brene Brown talking about we cannot selectively numb emotions. If we numb pain, we'll simultaneously numb joy. And one of the automatic things I do is I invert things or turn them upside down. And I thought, well, if we numb joy, by numbing pain, if we open ourselves to joy, we open our capacity to feel. So we can do the shadow work, we can investigate the things that we kind of cringe about from a place of more capacity. Because contrary to what a lot of people believe, social work is a strengths-based model. So you're trying to find strengths and building those strengths. And that's probably one of the reasons why I was attracted to positive psychology. So I thought using that strengths based model, I can help people feel more joy and they'll just be able to feel and hold more. So I started to notice that there were two things that were coming up time and time again with the women I was working with and the women in my community that prevented them from accessing that joy. Well, it was three things, but the two main things were how they work and how they are in heterosexual relationships. There was also parenting, I'll park that to the side. It was mainly work and heterosexual relationships. And I thought to myself, I could do a lot in the relationship space because of my background in social work, but because of my own life experience and the upbringing, I've got no patience. And what I believe is by the time you get to a point where you think this relationship is over, it's over. And I'm not going to help you stay. So I just thought, I'm just going to be supporting the divorce demographic in women over 40. So, and I understand, like, I don't have a lot of compassion for babying men. I have a lot of compassion for the way we have relationships with work and the way work literally is like Pac-Man, it just eats us up. So I thought I'm going to focus more with the work. And what I could see in all angles was what I started to refer to as toxic productivity, an obsessive, compulsive need to be productive all the time. And it wasn't confined to work. It shows up a lot at work, and at work, you're celebrated for it. At home, you're celebrated for it as well, because women are taught she's selfless. She would do anything for anyone. So I started talking about what I was seeing, loads and loads and loads. I didn't realize how much, because I'm just one of these people. If I feel passionate about something, it's like I've got a campaign. I'm just on it all the time. And so a publisher from one of the big 5 publishing houses sent me a message saying, I really like this conversation we're having about toxic productivity. Have you thought about writing a book about it? And I was like, am I talking about toxic productivity? So I had to go back through my Instagram and I just saw it everywhere, all over the place. I was talking about it. I didn't even realize. And so that is what then led, because I had an agent for quite a while, but I just wasn't sure what the topic would be. And I just thought, my agent said, don't rush. Sometimes these things, we have to wait for them to come to us. And things are always better when I wait and I just do what I'm supposed to do. Then the idea comes or somebody says something and I'm like, oh, that's what it was all the time. So that's how the book came about. So I went off and I started thinking about a proposal. And maybe because I come from a social work background, I can be quite clinical in my thinking. So I was thinking about, well, toxic productivity is basically work addiction. So we need toxic productivity recovery. So that was the idea. And then as it progressed and I got an editor who helped me with my proposal, because I just wrote way too much. She was like, this is very clinical, but there's so much more to you and you're so much warmer. I think this is what it's about. And that's where the title Women Who Work Too Much was born. There. That's how I got to and whether it's that I don't think it's a trend topic. I think burnout has always been an issue. We've talked about it in different ways. So I was in the, fortunate position where there were a number of publishers that were interested in publishing my book. Hay House seemed to get me as an individual more than the other publishers. And so, yeah, the Women Who Work Too Much was born.
It's so fabulous, and I really love the concept, and I think that toxic productivity is a topic that we all need to talk about because, well, especially in the US, but I'm guessing in any really developed or quote unquote weird society, that we do focus on productivity as the end all be all. Capitalism, that is what we should all strive for
Yep.
and subscribe to as the recipe for happiness.
Yeah.
And it really isn't. And it's this big kind of wake up call of, well, we're told that being productive is what we should do. But when does it become toxic? And then what should we be seeking instead?
It becomes toxic when you are constantly finding ways to be productive. So I hear lots of podcasts and lots of things talking about like optimizing, self-optimization, self-improvement, and there's no cutoff. So it becomes too much when you can't sit still. So it's things like when people talk about making themselves useful. It's things like it's a beautiful warm day and you are tired to the bone. Yet you say, it's a lovely day. I don't want to waste the day, so I'm going to get up and I'm going to get out and make the most of the day. Like there's never going to be another warm day. It is when people are, I talk about somebody in my life who I don't think I've ever seen her eat at dinner parties she hosts. And she knows I share this
Mm,
story.
yeah.
She's clearing, she's shuffling, she's ruffling before you finish drinking your drink. The drink's in the dishwasher. Can I help you load the dish? Go, no, the dishwasher. No, it's okay, I'll do it. We've run out of cream. I'll just pop down to the shop. Let me go. You're like, no, it's okay. You enjoy, you do it. And you just never see that person. They just cannot relax. It's almost as if, it's not even almost as if, they know, maybe not consciously, but deep down, if they slow down or stop, they will have to feel. And they're so terrified of what they will have to face if they feel in that they keep running, 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 running. I say it's like you're running on a treadmill. It's not a treadmill, it's a treadmill. Constant, 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 constant going. And if they're
Oh my
not being
gosh.
productive, they don't feel like they're useful. And if they're not useful, they haven't earned their place. So it's the friend who's always organizing. They're always the organizer. They're always the mother hen. They're always fussing. And it's almost like they're a buzzy bee. And you just want to say, just sit down. We just want you. We don't want you, what you do for us. We just want you. So it's that constant, it's those people you see on social media talking about how obsessed they are. I'm so obsessed with my career. I'm obsessed with my business. Work has to be fun. Make your life fun, then work can be boring. Okay? Don't be obsessed with your business, be obsessed with living really well. It's the people, especially in my industry, you see them going out for their hot girl mental health walk, but they're filming themselves and they're telling you about all these great business ideas they're having whilst they're walking. And I get it because I have got a good few reels when I've got an idea floats into my consciousness and I just record it there and then I put it out, but bosh, it's gone. But it's the constant optimizing your self-care so that it can be a productivity tool. So one of the things I decided for myself is that as much as possible, the things I do for my own personal life, my own personal well-being, I'm not sharing it on social media. Now, because of the type of work I do, especially because I talk about somatics and moving your body and how our bodies, like we've got so many hinges because we're supposed to be moving all the time. That's one of the ways we process and release stress. So there are occasions that I might share me working out in the gym or something because A, it's important for stress relief. B, it's important for strength. C, I'm 48. I'm a perimenopausal woman. It is very important for us at this time of life. And not just that, I think make those habits when you're young so that they're just with you forever. So I share those things. But I am no longer optimizing my productivity. I mean, my self care for productivity. I've stopped talking about rest so much online. I don't think rest is resistance. Thank you very much. Rest is mind. It's something I use to cherish myself. It may also resist, but I'm not using something as sacred and as necessary as rest as a tool of resistance. And I'm also mindful that because so many people are burnt out and they're so scared of being burnt out again, a lot of people are quiet quitting. So they're playing down their ambition, they're playing down their goals, they're living a life that is way smaller than what they're capable of. And what they don't realize is that underfunctioning also causes burnout. So, what we need to do is take the time to explore ourselves so that we can work out what our enough is. And people don't like it because everything online is about a hack. You're biohacking, it's a tactic, it's a quick fix. This isn't a quick fix. It took us a very long time to function like this. It's going to take a long time for us to get out of this dysfunction. And what I know from working with families that had intergenerational challenges, it takes a good 3 months for you to begin to see what's available on the other side. So when I say working out what's enough, you're not going to do it in a week. You need to dedicate 3 months solid of exploring yourself, testing things, getting to understand what feels like it's enough, what feels like, oh, yeah, I feel like the Fonz from Happy Days. I've done a good day's work. I feel so cool. And then start to work out, well, what is it that takes me over that? So rather than ending the day feeling like, yes, I've spent my energy well, you feel depleted instead. And that takes a lot of investigation. But that 3 months is worth it because it's going to support you for the rest of your life.
Okay, so many amazing insights just now. And I think you've touched on so many things that resonate with me as a woman, as a mother, as an overfunctioner, as someone who definitely avoided slowing down or stopping because that did require me to look deeper and to address underlying trauma, complex
Mm-hmm.
PTSD, acknowledgement that medicine was not the right career, that I had to switch gears, that you have to face these very difficult truths and
Yeah,
realities in your own life. It may be that, your relationship is not the right relationship. Maybe that your career is not the right career, that you're
yeah,
not living in the right city or something big that
yeah,
needs to be changed. And so we avoid that. And we avoid that by keeping busy and going, 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 doing, doing, doing. It's also how we derive our sense of self-worth. And because what am I if I'm not doing, if I'm not
mm,
being productive? What right do I have to exist and take up space and be here? And, if I'm not proving myself, if I'm not proving my worth, I think as women, we default to that mode. And it's interesting when you talked about your friend in the dinner party, there were so many opportunities for her to seek help or not even seek help, merely accept help. And she chose not to. And so, how can we as women be open to that idea that help is not weakness, help is strength? We're more powerful if we do things together.
mm.
And how do we sort of rewrite those narratives and undo those stories that we tell ourselves? So, yes, you've given us a lot to think about. And I think when it comes to something like joy, that's another very fraught topic because I think a lot of us don't even know what joy is. It's funny in the functional medicine world where I come from, we often refer to it as vitamin J. So,
I love that so much.
right? So you can have a vitamin deficiency, and we're very familiar with other vitamin deficiencies, vitamin D, things like that, vitamin B deficiency. We're well aware, but a vitamin J deficiency can definitely manifest as depression, anxiety, burnout, all of these things. And we then don't feel justified. Well, seeking joy is something frivolous. It's
Yeah.
something not, worthwhile. I'm not allowed to do that.
And it's childish.
It's childish. And so how do we rewrite those stories and allow people to seek joy and to figure out what it is that brings them joy
Mm.
and then give them permission to pursue that on some level?
Well, we live in the most advanced technology other than our planet herself. Okay. A lot of the data, I'd say even all of the data we need is nestled within ourselves. So if we understand our biology, it gives us a lot of information. So first and foremost, I think that everybody should have a basic understanding of our autonomic nervous system. Because when you understand that, you will understand that a lot of the things society has told us are abnormal are actually not just normal, but fundamental for human surviving and human thriving. So our society tells us that when you're an adult, you must be independent. And when they talk about independence, they are talking about hyper independence. If you need help, that means you're needy. Nobody wants anybody that's needy. If you say you don't like something and you have boundaries, nobody likes that because that means people have to behave differently. They can't just do what they want to do. They need to take into consideration how it impacts you. So if you think about those things, there are loads and loads of layers. However, biology tells us connection and support from other human beings is a biological need. Forget mindset, forget psychology, our biology requires it. And whilst we may not require it in the same way we did when we were hunter-gatherer groups, because we no longer need the whole group to be able to get a meal. We can just go to Deliveroo or whatever the equivalent is in your country. We don't need that. However, loneliness is a health issue. Loneliness contributes to, or a lack of connection contributes to lower mortality rates or higher, whichever way it goes. Basically, lonely people die quicker. Okay. When you look at
Absolutely.
blue zones, connection is one of the fundamental things. We need other human beings. So when you understand we have a biological need for connection, for care, for support, for love. It helps to dissolve all of the isms and schisms we have picked up from society. So, me as a hyper independent, I can do it person, when I understood connection and belonging as a biological need, it dissolved a whole lot. And when I had my first session with the somatic school, so I did my training in 2020. We started in March. We were hearing about
Boy,
COVID,
boy.
know what it was. We were hearing about pandemic. We were like, yeah, cool.
Sure.
Imagine March. We were
March
there in
2020.
person, breathing all over each other, hugging strangers and all sorts. And then a week and a half later, we went into lockdown.
My
But during
goodness.
that session, when the foundations of our course was being explained, a swell of rage overcame me. Now, as a woman, as a Black woman, I learned to suppress rage really, really quickly. I could not have rage because I didn't want to be judged. I didn't want to be living up to a negative stereotype. But that rage, it was delicious. I'm so glad I couldn't shut it down because I was like, oh my goodness, I've been robbed of my humanity. And I was livid, not in a dragon fire breathing way, but I was compelled. Rage tells us we've experienced an injustice. And I was like, do you know what? I'm doing something about this. I am doing something about this. I'm going to feel my feelings. I'm going to bring a whole load of people along with me because it felt, and I say it's delicious. So here in the UK, we've got these Thai sweet chili crisps. They're
Mm,
crisp, they're salty, they're sweet, and they're spicy all
spicy.
in one,
Perfect.
right?
Yes,
And
I would
the
love
rage
those, and
was
my daughter would
delicious.
love those.
My goodness, they're the best. And the rage was delicious like that. I was
Because
able to savor it.
you can save, I was about to say, you're going to savor it and experience it on a sensory level,
My goodness.
and it
The
impels you to
numbness,
action.
yeah, the numbness started to dissolve. And I thought, oh my goodness. So the moral of my story is our body is very, very intelligent. The society in which we live teaches us to shut it down, especially if you are a woman, if you are a person from a group that is systemically marginalized. Because if we feel we are connected with a wellspring of power, and we know what's right for us and we know what's wrong for us, and we'll take a stand for ourselves. If we're numb, we'll autopilot into overfunctioning, toxic productivity. Well, I've got to behave like this because that's the only way I can get promoted. I can't be like this because I won't be able to get a husband. So we just find all of these ways of overfunctioning, and we suppress, suppress, suppress. When we feel, we start to say things like I shared a reel on Instagram that went viral, and I was talking about a quote from a post on Substack that said, "The more I heal, the less ambitious I become." And I said, I don't think it's about becoming less ambitious. I think we become more discerning about what we're ambitious for. So prior to this journey, ambition for me was about status, money, really and truly. That's what it was about. Get more money in my work, get more status, get promoted. Everybody will think I'm good. So people will think I'm valuable. People will want me around. When I sat with what is it that makes my life feel successful? Totally different vibe. So rather than working for the sake of working, my work is purposeful and meaningful because now I'm working in service of my joy. I'm working to create a life that feels like a banquet rather than constantly eating Haribo when I need an actual full meal. And when I sat down and thought about, well, what are the things that make me feel alive? That I live in the suburbs of London, and down the road from me, there's a dairy farm. One of the things I enjoy the most is going on a long walk and cutting through the dairy farm and just watching the cows. And when they've had their babies, watching the cows and their calves doing their thing. I love it. It's one of my favorite things. Seeing the stream, see what the stream is doing, see what the birds and bees are doing. In my local park, there's a peace garden, and I'll often go there with my journal and just watching the interplay between the birds and the butterflies and the bees and the squirrels, and seeing how the parakeets that are local like harass everything that's in the park. That for me is utterly beautiful. It is way more beautiful than me spending loads of money on a fancy handbag that ends up sitting in my wardrobe for ages and ages. So it just helps me become more discerning about what I'm ambitious for. And that helps me understand what is enough for me.
It doesn't cost anything to walk through the dairy farm,
My goodness.
but the dividends, the returns are so great. And
I
I
will
think,
add something though.
yeah,
My right knee is not in good shape. Unfortunately, in my gene pool, we have lots of issues with knees. And I say that because my ambition, like in comparison to what the average salary is in the UK, I make significantly more and I want to make more because it's things like I have to wear hiking shoes when I'm going on a long walk because it supports my knees better. They weren't cheap. Right.
yeah,
So
right.
whilst the walk is free, the clubber I need to support my dicky knee and everything else I've got going on. So when I talk about making sure we're not quite quitting, when I'm talking about those things, I want women to want what they want and go for it in a way that is regenerative. I want women to know that they are all powerful, almighty, and construct an environment that supports that. Because what often happens is we are our own version of an oak tree or a palm tree, and we're trying to confine ourselves to a plant pot. So we don't have enough room for what we want. So we try to shrink to fit. No, let's create the expansion so that we've got space, not necessarily to so that we can flex and bend and really enjoy that space. So I say that because I'm very keen for us to be honest with ourselves about not just what we need, but what we desire. I say, just like all humans have a gut brain axis, I say that women and people with a clitoris have a pleasure power axis. So we need to make sure that we're creating stuff that supports us to live these pleasurable lives, but understand what pleasure is for us, not arbitrary success metrics.
Oh my goodness. Okay, that's a new one here, right here. You heard it here first on the Outsmart Burnout podcast, the pleasure power axis. I love it. I don't want to end this conversation without touching on something that you talk about in your book, which is the Trinity of oppression, which is the intersection and the impact of patriarchy, capitalism, and white supremacy. So
Yeah.
yes, we're going to just tackle that elephant in the room.
Yeah.
And
And thank
go
you
for
so
it.
much for doing that. You're one of few
Yeah.
people that is like, yeah, come on, bring it on.
No,
When
we're all about bring it on here on the Outsmart Burnout
love it,
podcast. We keep it
love it.
real. We want to hit on those very tough topics, and this
Yes,
needs to be said.
100%, 100%. So when I first had the idea for my book, I thought that I was going to be writing all about capitalism, touch of patriarchy. And as a Black woman, I would be talking about white supremacy. But when I started doing the research, everywhere I found white supremacy, I found patriarchy, I found capitalism. Everywhere I found capitalism, the three of them work in tandem. And
Travel in a pack.
my goodness, they are a trio. One of the two, I haven't constantly read reviews on Amazon, but two reviews on Amazon said something along the lines of, if you're a white woman, don't read this book, it's racist. And I just think, you wish I was talking about individual white people. This is beyond that. I am talking about a system. And the system of white supremacy, it doesn't just impact people of the global majority, it impacts white people as well. White supremacy says to white women, you are immature, you are weak, you are hysterical, you are not of sound mind, you cannot make choices for yourself. It relies on white women being infantile. So it like makes white women infantile and it makes Black women animalistic, feral, need to be controlled. All of it is about control.
It's all about control and suppression. Absolutely.
Exactly. Exactly. It is all a system of control. And what I wanted to illustrate, and what I think I illustrate, is that these systems create an environment that is like the air we breathe, and it normalizes a lot of behavior that we internalize as our own fault, which is why the first sentence in the first chapter of my book starts, it's not your fault. When
Mm,
you can,
yes.
thank you so much, when you can take yourself out of it and look at the systems as they are, you will see that a lot of the ways you have decided are normal have been thrust upon you. And another reason I talk about somatics and the body and understanding the autonomic nervous system is that when you understand these systems for what they are, you will see that they are designed to keep us stuck in survival. When we're stuck in, like people say, talking about these things creates division. No, leaving elephants in the room, as you pointed out, creates division and we're tiptoeing around stuff. Whereas when we see it for what it is and we understand what it is to be a human being and you understand the science, the biology of connection and belonging, all of these stuff about you're different from me, I'm different from you, it dissolves and you start to recognize that unity doesn't mean that we are all the same, we are one homogenous group. Unity is, I see you as the human being you are, and I'm prepared to meet you there. And I understand that sometimes your needs are in opposition to my needs, so we can have a conversation and see how we can work around that, how we can support each other, or how we can decide we're just not for each other, because not everything's for everybody. But when we have this like white supremacist notion of being nice instead of being kind and instead of being honest, it creates division, it creates barriers, it creates hierarchies. Whereas when you understand what it is to be a human being, rather than patriarchy, which is about a hierarchical structure, it is much more matriarchal. And matriarchy is not the opposite of patriarchy. Matriarchy is an ecosystem. Matriarchy is, maybe there are people that lead us in certain ways, but we're all leaders. We all have something to contribute. We can all collaborate and do things together. So that's why I talk about that so much, because we blame ourselves. We're on this constant pursuit of self improvement. And I'm like, have you noticed? It doesn't matter how much you improve, it's never enough. The enough is always tantalizingly out of reach. We don't need more self improvement, actually. We need systemic change. And if you look at the state of the countries we live in and how fascism is rising, that is a result of a system that has created so much survival stress, and also the system is contracting. So where imperial cultures, let's say, would go to other countries and colonize, they can't do that in the same way they were before. So they're now colonizing us. They're now exploiting us. They're exploiting us so that we can feed the top 5, the top 1%, and they create enough division within us so that we are fighting against each other for nothing, whilst the top 1, top 5% are gaining. And if we were able to see that these systems have been constructed, because fundamentally they're all constructed to maintain wealth at the top, if we could see that, then we will start to support each other and work for the greater good of all, rather than what's going on at the moment, which is the story of wealth has been constructed in such a way that we have been groomed to aspire to have what the oppressors have, rather than understanding actually oppression is oppression is oppression. Nobody benefits. And I don't care what anybody says. If you've got to start thinking about colonizing other planets, you're not benefiting from your oppression. If you are driving past in your lovely Bentley and there is somebody, when you stop at the traffic light, trying to wash your windscreen because they need some money to be able to buy lunch, as a human being, whether you recognize that or not, it has an impact on you. You are not living well knowing that there's somebody who's scrabbling around for a few coins to buy themselves some food by washing your windscreen. It just doesn't happen. We've learned to suppress it. We've learned to shut it off. Some people are doing a Marie, whatever her name is, let them eat cake. But nobody is thriving unless we're all thriving. And it's that simple.
Oh my gosh, I love this. And I truly hope that what we are experiencing right now on a worldwide basis, but particularly here in the US at the moment, is the extinction gasp of the patriarchy, because it is about time that we have a matriarchal structure. It is about time that we have female leaders, female presidents, female prime ministers. I mean, you're ahead of the game. Other countries are ahead of the game. We are very behind. We're a newer country, only a couple hundred years in. We'll see what happens, but we need to flip the script and we need to change these fundamental systems and infrastructure that keeps us stuck, that keeps us on this treadmill or dreadmill, as you call it, and really just sacrificing our lives and our happiness and our joy in the name of capitalism and
Exactly.
patriarchy and the top 1%, and then tricking us into believing that we're choosing it and that we're succeeding.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And all the while we're burning out.
All the while we're burning out. And one of the kind of like thinking about the body, thinking about the science of connection, one of the things I talk about is the antidote to this is that human connection. And I know we're all very, very busy. I know that, sometimes it's like, well, how am I going to find the time? Because if I don't do this work, I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. I understand that it's really real like that. But we look at the little things we can do and build from there. So it's things like not far from me, there's a lovely it's a very small nature reserve. And when the local government made cuts, they stopped maintaining it as well as they did previously. So now we volunteer and we take turns, whether it is weeding, whether it's planting bulbs in the autumn to come up in the spring or whatever the case may be. So it's like, even if you say, I can do once a quarter. If everybody in your local community does once a quarter, that's a whole load of people being able to do stuff. It's little things like where I live, there's it's quite an elderly population. And there was one day that my tire needed pumping up. And I was supposed to have done it before. The RAC recovery person said, go and do this because if it goes out again, we'll charge you for it. And I was like, I thought I got away with it and it went down again. And so I explained what happened. And one of the older gentlemen on my street, he couldn't say yes fast enough. He had this new gadget that he wanted to test out. I thought, oh, how is he going to help? I thought he was going to, oh no, it was jumpstart my car. It was the battery. I thought he was going to come around with his car to jumpstart. He had some gadget that was a battery pack. He couldn't wait to use it. He felt useful for the day. I was a damsel in distress and he supported me. And for that, it wasn't because, oh, I'm so grateful. but I was. But as a gesture of goodwill and neighborliness, I just baked a little lemon drizzle cake and took it round to say thank you. And now when we see each other, like I would not have known this man from Adam before. But now that we've had that connection, when we see each other, it's good morning, good afternoon. It's a little bit of small talk. That's the sort of thing we need to be doing. We don't, when we think about, oh my goodness, the system needs to change, we don't necessarily need to be going down to the White House or the Houses of Parliament and shaking the railings. We can do this by forming connections so that we're looking after each other. Because as human beings, when we take care of ourselves and we're meeting our needs, the way we're designed, our natural thing is to extend that to another. So if we're extending that to our neighbor now has the capacity and we can extend that further afield, and it has a massive ripple effect. Yes, there are times that Kristen Neff talks about this beautifully in her book, Fierce Compassion, where we do need to be doing the protests and we do need to be doing those other things. But the things that we do day by day, over and over again, those are the things that help things stick. So sometimes we do these protests and they disrupt the pattern, but it's very easy for us to go back to how it was before. But if we commit, these are going to be my quarterly actions. These are my quarterly commitments. That's how we make a really big change. When I think about the civil rights movement in the US, that was years and years and years of community coming together and organizing and supporting each other and caring for each other. We need to, we can't keep approaching a marathon like it's a sprint. That's why we end up burnt out. And then we also have this compassion fatigue and then we feel guilty about it. If we're able to do things in sustainable ways and recognize that we can't do it all, but we can do our bit, and collectively everybody doing their bit is going to make a huge change. We reduce that cycle of burnout that capitalism, patriarchy, and white supremacy benefit from, and we start to operate in manners that are regenerative. And it's even little things like, sorry, I'm so passionate about this, I've always got so much to say, but it's little things or things that we perceive to be little things, like there's a cafe not far from me and people go there and co-work. So you're supporting your local business, you're buying food, you're buying drinks whilst you're there. You start to see people, you recognize faces, you start to say good morning to people. Then you see them when you're going to the chemist, you start to have conversations. Then you see them when there's the little jazz festival in the park, and you start to build relationships. If we can do that, we will make huge change that benefits us and our children's 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 children.
I love that. So we always like to leave folks with something tangible and practical that they can do once they turn off this podcast and go back to their daily lives. So what would you say to the woman who is listening today and is struggling and is feeling overwhelmed, burned out, hyper functioning? How can they take one step towards joy away from toxic productivity?
My kind of entry into this was journaling, because we keep a lot in our minds. And one of my mentors a couple of years ago said, overwhelm comes from having too much unplanned to do. And I thought, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And it took me back to journaling. I had so much going on in my mind that was adding to everything else I needed to do. I started journaling. And what I did was I started to read back over what I was journaling so that I could begin to recognize the patterns. So it's a little bit like it's a little spring clean for your brain. So I would start a practice of journaling. If you feel like, oh, I haven't got the time, journaling isn't my thing. Most of us have got smartphones, if not all of us. Use the voice notes app on your phone and then just label it so you know what you've been talking about, and be brave and listen back to it. Just that act of verbalize it. Like, journaling is the best because the act of writing, it just has so much more of an impact. But if you can't do that, voice noting so that you're getting out and you can listen back, so that you can start to pick up some of your patterns, some of your habits. You can start to identify, "Oh, I can see now that I behave in this way as a reaction to this thing that happened." And you touched on this earlier on about when you start to have those inner conversations with yourself, you start to notice the things that are no longer aligned, whether it's work, relationships, or whatever. It can be very, very painful, because what you can realize is that there are many relationships, and work is one of our relationships. It's one of our most enduring, intimate relationships, as well as the personal relationships. You start to see that there are relationships you've outgrown, and then you're going to have to do something about it. And that's very, very painful. It really, really hurts. but the journaling is the catalyst, and it helps you start to understand these things. And it may be at first you kind of operate differently in those relationships. And at some point in time, you may have to say, actually, these relationships aren't healthy for me anymore. And I've contributed to them. It's not that this work has done this to me. This person is we do our own, we have our own roles to play as well. But it's a great start. It just helps you to see what you're carrying in your mind. And another thing I ask you to think about is, where did you see that first? Because when I started to journal and saw a lot of my overfunctioning, I was taken right back to my childhood, seeing my mother overfunction at work, in marriage, and all sorts. So we start to recognize, right, this behavior isn't genuinely my own. This behavior is part of behavior I've inherited. So I could pathologize myself and make a big deal about it, or I could say, do you know what? This bag doesn't belong to me, so I'm putting it down so I can focus on my own bags. It's very cathartic.
I love it. So yes, pick up a journal, get started. Doesn't have to be fancy. Could be any kind of notebook, any kind of pen. Can do it anytime. A lot of people say do it in the morning. Sometimes I journal at night because I'm not a morning person. So it really can be any time. Could be while you're on a walk and doing that
Yeah,
little notes app.
absolutely.
I have absolutely loved this conversation. This has been so eye-opening, so enlightening. Thank you for all of your brilliant insights and for equipping us with some of the tools and the mindset and the knowledge to shift from burnout to belonging in a new type of way, in a new type of society that we're building as we go along. So if you are listening and you are ready to break free from toxic productivity, definitely check out Tamu's book, Women Who Work Too Much. It is incredible. I can't wait to get my hands on it because I've read here and there little bits and pieces and I want to read the whole thing cover to cover. And definitely check you out in your life coaching website and on Instagram at Tamu.Thomas. We're going to put all of this in the show notes. Any other things you'd like to tell our listeners in terms of getting in touch with you or working with you? You're in the UK, but you probably work virtually, so work with folks all over the world.
Yes, I work with people all over the world. I would say come and find me on Instagram or LinkedIn, because those are the places I update with what I've got going on.
Perfect. And if this episode resonated with you, and I really hope it did because it's been one of my absolute favorites, make sure to share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Like, subscribe, leave us a comment, a review, and a rating, because it really does help get this podcast seen by women who need this message. And as always, remember, burnout is not your destiny. It's your wake-up call.